Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today here in Kenya, webinar entitled The Future of HR in the Digital Age, Spotlight on the Manufacturing Industry. I would like to thank all our panelists for being here. Dr. Wilson, Mr. Paul, Bhupesh, Dr. Barry. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. You are an esteemed company, ladies and gentlemen, participants and attendees. Also, with that said, I would like to welcome the attendees and say enjoy this session. I'm looking forward to this robust conversation that is about to take place, talking about the digital age and the manufacturing industry. Just some logistics, ladies and gentlemen. You are more than welcome to post as many questions in the Q&A section. I will monitor that and post the questions to the panelists. And then from here on, have fun. I'm looking forward to our conversation, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Linda Kutsia, and I am Regenesis Business School, South Africa, and looking forward to joining and looking forward to having this conversation with you. So let us introduce our esteemed panelists. The panelists, I'm going to not read a biography for you because I often leave things out and I don't want to offend everyone or anyone with anything that I say. So I'm going to leave it to each and every panelist to introduce themselves, tell us about where you are from, and we shall take it from there. Anyone who would like to introduce himself first, let us start perhaps with Dr. Wilson, if you would like to be the first to introduce yourself. Dr. Wilson?
Thank you very much indeed, Linda. Earlier on, as we were speaking with Bhupesh, and he said he's here in Paul Okwemba, who is my fellow panelist, of course, is my next door neighbor. But that said, as you said already, my name is Wilson Odio. I am I hold the position of General Manager in charge of Human Resources at Kakuzi PLC, which is an agribusiness company based about 60 kilometers north of Nairobi. So I'm very glad to be here. I also double up sometimes, actually all the time in academia, mostly helping in training postgraduate students at both master's and PhD level. So my experience, of course, cuts across both industry, where I, of course, have been working for close to 30 years now, but also doing lots of work in academia and publishing, some of my researches, which I have also been doing for about 15 years. So in a nutshell, that's me. Obviously, there's a lot more where that came from, but for now, we shall do with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. And is it okay if I call you Wilson? I would love to use the doctor, but Dr. Wilson, is it okay if I address you as such?
Either way, I'm perfect.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Paul, if you would like to introduce yourself, your company. Paul is from Nampak. So definite interest in this conversation from that perspective. Paul, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And it's my pleasure to be here today. I didn't expect to see my next door neighbor, Wilson. I'm happy to see him here, and I think it's going to be very well lit. Paul Okwemba is a HR practitioner for many years, probably about 17 years at senior level, entirely in manufacturing, actually, and starting with the finished fast-moving consumer goods and transitioning into packaging manufacturing under Nampak. I'm sure Linda knows Nampak very well. And Currently, I've taken a deviation from mainstream HR, and I'm now general manager for NAMPAC in East Africa for a period of almost 1 year now. And perhaps as we get into this conversation, it's going to be interesting how HR gets itself into general management, and it forms part of this discussion, looking at the benefits of and the contribution of IT or digitization in career development, and the general contribution to the business. So I've worked for NAMPAC the last 12 years. I started off as HR manager for the Kenyan business, transitioned to the East African business, and recently I have assumed the role of a general manager, looking after the entire business operations in Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. So I'm here and very happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you, Paul. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us. Dr. Barry, that makes you the next person to introduce yourself, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Dr. Barry van der Westhuizen. I spent the majority of my career straddling academics, but also heavily involved in garment manufacture for the last 35 odd years. And the fourth industrial revolution, technology has posed major challenges to us in the industry, given the fact that the garment industry is the largest worldwide employer of semi-skilled and unskilled women in the world. So technology, HR involvement, upskilling, all of that big challenges for us. So it's a privilege to be here, and thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barry. Already touching the points and the issues, but we'll introduce that and have every panelist just weigh in as far as that upskilling and unskilled, skilled labor, etc. So also then I would like Bhupesh, our CEO Emerging Markets, sitting in Kenya right now, just to say hello to the audience. He will be my co-presenter or just listening in. Bhupesh, if you'd like to say hello to your participants and those panelists in front of us, and maybe give us a background as to you as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Linda, and absolutely delighted to be, in panel with such esteemed personalities, including you, Linda. Thank you so much for, getting us, on one platform. And yeah, I am associated with Regenesis Business School as a CEO for the emerging markets. My current role entitles building up new geographies, to begin with Kenya, which is going to be our gateway to the entire East African country. So we have our presence. Needed to mention that we are present in Kenya and Nigeria, and then to be followed by Tanzania and other places. In my personal capacity, I'm an engineering student. Post that an MBA. I am also a qualified lawyer. And so yeah, and I've had my share of working with universities across the globe. But yes, now Regenesis is my home, and taking on all the wonderful responsibilities bestowed upon me. And yes, definitely looking forward to. Dr. Barry touched upon the fact of the rapid technology adoption, and then how the entire landscape is going to change for people and people practices. Really looking forward to hear and excited about it.
Yes. Well, esteemed panel, as I said before, thank you very much, gentlemen. Your time is appreciated, and I cannot wait to hear your insight. But let me fall straight into the questions and straight into that framework that we wish to reach. Gentlemen, and I'm going to pose a question on behalf of the listeners. We don't know who's logged in social media, so there's quite a few listeners listening to us on the live stream. But to set the context that we are working in, all of you have said something about it. All of you have mentioned skilling, upskilling, unskilled, as well as the digital transformation within your sector. So I think my question is going to be straightforward, and for those, because I know that some of the participants is not from the manufacturing, they're interested in the conversation that we are having and interested to hearing what different sectors are doing and how different sectors are managing the challenges, or what is seen as challenges when it comes to the digital transformation. So on behalf of those, maybe if we could just set the context and say, within our sector, what are the key challenges for the manufacturing sector in this new digital age? Key challenges, if I may ask, if I may ask you, Dr. Wilson, maybe if you could reflect. I know that your company, Kakuzi, also has, different products that you are, that you deliver, and that's part of your value chain. So perhaps if you can talk to us about those key challenges in your sector regarding this new digital age. Set the tone for us. You are on mute, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Linda. Just to start by saying that, a few years ago, those of us with a human capital background, we were talking very much about the future of employment and the future of jobs. Now that future arrived much earlier than we had anticipated that it would. That future is now. The quickening of the Internet of Things, the prominent place that the Internet of Things has taken, artificial intelligence and robotics, all these things and many other things that are happening in the digital space. The challenge that has brought to a very large extent is the necessity, as you have rightly pointed out, to multi-skill and even to reskill. The unfortunate thing with this multi-skilling and reskilling is that there is the requirement almost of a non-stop change happening all the time. Several years ago, you would have situations that would, if you're talking about manufacturing, for instance, and you talk about technology there would be changes, but the changes were a lot less rapid. They were a lot less faster. So now, not only are you dealing with, the digital age and new technology, but it is changing all the time. What that calls for is a situation of, continuous organizational learning. We must all be adept at constantly learning and relearning all the time. So the challenge is that all the time it's something that is happening very rapidly. What is also associated with that is the fact then that not only is technology changing rapidly, but also the product life cycles are also a lot faster, changing a lot faster. And so that means that you have to continuously innovate, you have to continuously be creative and innovative. That is possible, but it's not always possible in the manner and at the speed that you need to be able to catch up with the rate at which things are going. So that skill gap can be an issue in many instances. We are also in the age of big data. Of course, that is important, and that's very important for purposes of greater efficiencies, more appropriate decision making, because you've got lots of information that you need to make decisions. But then the other side to it then is that then you've got to worry about cybersecurity, because almost all the information that you're dealing with is within the Internet of Things. So yes, there are those challenges, and I'm sure my colleagues will add to them. And they are a challenge because we've got to be on the cutting edge of things. We've got to be agile. We've got to be flexible, and so on and so forth. If you look at the employee side of things, because it won't be complete for me if I do not talk about the employees. When we engage employees at the workplace, including for manufacturing, we are looking at a number of relationships that we have with the employees. We have with them a legal relationship in terms of the contracts that we have. We have an economic relationship because we have to pay them for the work that they put in. We have a social relationship because they spend a lot more time at the workplace, and therefore it's important for them to have a social life and a social relationship at the workplace. But more importantly, and what is now affected more by this rapid change in the digital age, is the psychological contract that you have with the employees. The psychological contract goes beyond what is contained in the terms and conditions of employment of that particular employee. There are certain expectations that the employee has of their employer. Now, what sort of employee are we dealing with in the digital age, and which is related to the age in which we are, and which has a link even to the generations that we have at the workplace? We've got employees that want more flexibility. They want to be more creative and more innovative. They want to have more of what we call work and life integration. So that means then that the challenge for us in this digital age is to be able to keep these employees engaged to their work, committed to their mandates, so that we can, within the exigencies of what is happening, still be able to have the best out of them. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, there's so many words and so many linkage that I want to make in what you have said. I think you spoke about agility, you spoke about innovation, you spoke about these technical skills and upskilling that needs to happen, but you also brought in what was formerly referred to as soft skills. And we can have a conversation about soft and hard skills for the rest of the day, right? But also the psychological contract, I would like to delve into that a little bit later, or explore those notions a little bit later. But what I also think you said, or what I think we need to connect to as well, is employee wellness, that work-life balance that we need to consider as HR individuals, and then ensuring a motivated and productive workforce. How does that look like in this digital age, where flexibility is so huge, where recruitment is global? You know, we're competing globally for talent, if I can put that up straightforward. But that's definitely issues that we need to delve into when we talk about the digital age. Maybe Paul, if you would like to add to what Dr. Wilson has said, or Barry, if you would like to add to that. But my takeaway from everything that you said, thanks Barry, my takeaway from everything that you said, and which I think people also need to learn and need to understand, because I think a lot of fear lies within the fact that it's technical skills that we need to upskill, but people forget how important that, and in phrases, soft skills, because you spoke about change, it's soft skills. You spoke about all of the things that leans into productivity, which is the most essential, I mean, of what we want from employees. And everything that you mentioned adds to that. So I'm going to stop talking. Please, Dr. Barry, you guys are the experts. So please, if you would like to add
Thank
to
you
that.
very much. Dr. Wilson, very valid points, and I congratulate you on that. In the garment industry, a couple of things we've seen have been fast-tracked by the global pandemic, COVID. We have had this big digital revolution on our doorstep, and in our industry, COVID forced it through. A couple of issues. Firstly, mobile IP. We're no longer working with command and control production lines. We're working with a lot of technology-aided production lines. And I've got to talk again to the unskilled and semi-skilled labor force, and that soft skill contract we have with them, keeping them motivated, ensuring them that they have a life cycle. An employment rate is very important. moving away from factories, and we saw this happen in Bangladesh, sadly. It seems to be normalizing now, but getting back to production is a big thing. I just highlighted a few things over here. Design in the clothing industry using AI and fractal designs has come in. We've got a lot more young, innovative designers threatening the traditional design houses. We've got mass customization happening along with body scanning. We've introduced laser cutting for our patterns, which has reduced cutting times, increased productivity, increased GP, but the human factor is going out of that. We need to upskill, reskill them. We've got sewing robots coming in, big factories like Fruit Loom are using it. We've got 3D printing coming in. In Europe, we've got fast fashion, which puts big pressure on our value chain and our throughput time and our production. Luckily now with the circular economy and people becoming more green oriented, we've got slow fashion trying to balance it out. But the bottom line is our biggest asset is our workforce, and we need to close that gap between technological advancement that will give us the cutting edge and make us competitive and our human assets. And as I say, in the garment industry, we are dealing with a lot of unskilled and semi-skilled women who are prejudiced against. We know it's a global initiative right now to try and reduce that. But to keep our country's economies viable, we've got to look after our human capital. So that's just my little piece on that. And I hope that adds some value to it.
Absolutely. I think one of the other things that we should stand still at, which you also brought up, and I'm writing everything down, hopefully we'll get there, is sustainability and the green economy, and how much us as Africans are responsible for that, and responsible for the continent that I think sustains the world. But I'm biased.
Sorry, may I add one more thing? Kenya is a big supplier of cotton to the garment industry, and we can't forget the macroeconomic effects and vertical integration. We need to look after ourselves in Africa.
Yeah. So, Paul, I would love to hear your additions, because you work for a huge multinational company, but you are African as well. So you sustain what we are all proud of. And I would like to hear what your thoughts are regarding these challenges, regarding the human capital, human assets, all of these beautiful words that our colleagues have said already. Paul, if you would like to add to that.
Yeah. I just want to add that HR makes its contribution. I hope I'm audible. I'd like to just mention that HR makes its contribution to enterprise through many ways, and key among them is... Is
it just me who is froze? Hello? Oh, you froze a little bit. Please repeat your last sentence. HR, you were saying HR?
Yeah, makes its contribution to enterprise through several areas, and I just want to pick key among them is strategy alignment, administrative expertise, change management, and employee championing. And I think these are digitization has presented us with tools that we can use to increase our efficiency and effectiveness in all these areas. I want to pick up like when you look at strategy alignment, strategy making and decision making, look at the role of digitization is in the collection and use of information. This presents an opportunity as well as a challenge being that strategy formulation and implementation has become critical in the operations, and digitization, apart from helping us to get the information, it also helps us to be transparent. So the challenge of being more transparent and accountable has gone up, because the knowledge of the stakeholders, the kind of information the stakeholders have, it is readily available, and they can be able to either support or challenge what they think is not working well in strategy. Digitization has also brought an opportunity and a challenge at the same time of involvement. I think by virtue of ease of communication, everybody around wants to know what is happening, why you're making decisions, and how these decisions are affecting them. Mm-hmm. So again, decision-making has been taken to another level. You must be able to ensure that you balance all the stakeholder needs, because if you don't do that, then people have a way of communicating. People have a way of letting you know when things go wrong. It's not like previously when people lacked the means to communicate or to give feedback. So digitization enabled us to better engage our stakeholders. And for this matter, employees, yeah, to start with, to involve them in every aspect of the business and to make sure that the deal we have with them actually makes sense to them. My friend Wilson talked about the psychological contract. It is very easy nowadays to define, to design, and manage the psychological contract digitally, because basically it talks about what is in it for me. And digitization enables the conversation of what is in it for me to go on daily basis. We don't need to have formal engagements. People have an opportunity to express themselves, to exert their positions, and also to ask for what they think they're entitled to. Yeah. So the challenge is raised by digitization. Unfortunately, again, it comes with costs. So technology, both the software and the hardware and all the infrastructure that goes with it, requires us to justify budgets. And probably sometimes, since the benefit is not clearly foreseen, for HR people, it might be difficult to justify some budgets. Many enterprises will easily see the need for putting in digitization in machinery, in manufacturing, in finance. But when it comes to people, it will take you a bigger effort for you to justify. So you justify how digitization can help, and then you have to also look at the return on investment. Return on investment here is not quantitative. Mm. Most of it is qualitative. Mm. And it calls upon you to be very creative, very innovative in trying to bring out or to convince the stakeholders how digitization is going to benefit. Digitization in HR practice has also resulted in what we can call standardization or universalization. Everybody knows what is happening around the world as far as the workplace is concerned. So you're not living in your own silo, and you are judged not by your local standards, not by your in-house standards, but the universal standards. So your work is cut out, yeah? Your work is cut out. You have to prove that you are actually among the best for you to attract, to retain, and generally to keep employees satisfied. The last one is a challenge I want to talk about is control of information. Basically, you have no way to control information. So you have to know how to manage information. Yeah. If you don't do that, then information can be so damaging, can be counterproductive. And we have seen so many areas where information gets to people before the intended time, or the wrong information gets to people. And so managing information flow and the confidentiality that goes with it is a big challenge with digitization. But all in all, I think challenges make us better. Anytime we encounter them, we know how to surmount them. And we can only celebrate the fact that digitization is helping HR to assert itself in the workplace and to deliver value to the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm so grateful that you brought in the strategic importance of an HR practitioner, or an HR manager, and the HR unit or the HR department within an organization, because you are the link between the executives and the employee, right? And you are in charge of managing what we have referred to before as the human capital and the human asset of an organization. Everything that you've mentioned definitely is something that we can continue, that managing of communication. And very often, communication is there, but the message was misinterpreted because we don't talk to one another face to face anymore. And so much of what we talk lies within our body language and how we express ourselves and how we see one another. And we forget about that if we're just texting and just typing and things like that. So that's definitely, again, a bridge that was created, but has its pros and cons to it as well. I'm also very grateful for mentioning the ROI and budgeting and how why decisions are made that the investments should go to manufacturing, and you can talk more about that as well. But our investment lies within our human capital, lies within our human assets, the skilling, upskilling, and so forth, specifically because of this global, what did you say, global universal standards that we need to meet and that we need to adhere to. So very grateful for those points that you are that you've made, and talking about these shifts that's taking place. And maybe if we can stand still at that, that's occupational shifts. Dr. Barry, you were talking about we cannot deny the fact that this industry, this sector, has a lot of reliance on what would have previously been referred to as unskilled. But if we have a look at what they are doing, it is a highly skilled occupation that they are fulfilling, but there's no kind of paper against the wall substantiating that they have these skills, these talents, these farming skills that they have. So maybe if we can have a look at this, what are we talking about within your industry when we talk about, what is that word, occupational shifts? Let's just make that clear to those who are listening, and to those who are listening maybe with fear that, yes, I do have this skill, I work with my hands. Dr. Barry, you were talking about machines that are going to do the sewing for me and things like that. How do we make sure that fear doesn't become the only reason why people stay at an organization, and that they still stay because of the psychological contract, I like that word, that we have with our employees? So I don't know what the question is, but I think that I'm framing context for you, and maybe if you could add to what I'm saying here. Dr. Barry, if you would like to start, and then Dr.
Certainly.
Paul.
I would like to just handshake with Paul there. It's very important for us to have really good, transparent, global governance, to have clear, honest communications with all our stakeholders. I want to start there because we've got a lot of influencers on social media that can tip the scale of the dynamics of our company. They can de-stress or stress the human capital. So that is one thing we have to have. Secondly, we must not forget the artisan. And all these lovely tools coming into play, whether they're laser cutters or digital design, they are tools. And it's our job, and I'm speaking from the garment manufacturing, I know very little about making boxes, Paul, but it's really, really important for us to spend the time to upskill, familiarize the artisans with the tools so that they can use that to improve our value chain. And I know the big fear is with artisans is that they feel that they don't have a PhD, ergo they aren't good enough. I can't do what many of my artisans do. They are highly skilled people. They are master craftsmen. And really, it's about bringing technology to them and taking the time not only to invest a couple of million in a beautiful new big machine, but to expend the time to invest in the human capital that's going to use it to its best advantage and our advantage. So spending more and more time with the people on the floor, the people that actually make the garmenting for us, is vital. And we have to do that with clear communication and data security so that we don't get hijacked and the wrong message goes out and it's insider trading, etc., etc. But we have to make our staff feel comfortable. This is a lifelong job, a career. You're a skilled professional at the top of your art, and then pass it on. That is so important. So that lifelong learning, that skill, that looking after the trade, looking after the artisan, for me is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Dr. Barry. And I think you hit the nail, because it is about maintaining the skill within the framework of digital transformation, right? And making sure that that skill is honed in order to add value to the ultimate product that we deliver as an organization. Dr. Wilson, I saw you nodding your head as Dr. Barry was talking. Is there something you would like to add?
Yeah, I was just nodding, Linda, to say that I agree absolutely. I think, and especially when Dr. Barry was talking about, the skills that the artisans have and that sort of thing. And ordinarily, artisans are people, lower down, the employment rank and everything. But talking about occupational shifts, and which is coming with this digital age and the skills that are required, we must look at talent more than anything else now, because what is it that contributes to the bottom line of an organization? It's the contribution of the individual employees. Obviously, whereas it is important, and I know that there may be MBA students in attendance at this, whereas it's very important to go and acquire skills in school and everything. Those skills indeed will get you through the door of an organization so that you can join that organization and start working for it. But what will take you to the next level, having joined the organization, is the talent that you have, how skillful you are, and how agile you are in terms of getting new skills and changing as the organizations are changing and as technology is changing, so that at the end of the day, you are relevant to the organization that you worked for. So in terms of this occupational shift, I see one very important thing, that we must think at the macro level, but as people who work for organizations and that drive the agenda of organizations, that while thinking at the macro level, we must act at the micro level. What that means is that all these trends that are happening, including the digital age and the requirements of the digital age, they're happening at a global level. But at your individual organizational level, what are the things that we need to do to ensure that we are ready, so that when there's a shift in terms of the knowledge that people require, that we are ready for that shift? I see very much that, if you speak to the labor organizations, for instance, the labor organizations, part of their mandate is to protect jobs. Mm-hmm. Now, how do I tie in that with my thinking in terms of thinking globally and acting locally, or thinking at the macro level and acting at the micro level? With the digital age, some jobs are very fast becoming extinct. Now, however, better quality jobs are being created at the same time. So whereas it might look very bad that at one point we are actually losing certain jobs, one of the things that has happened here in Kenya is in the tea industry.
Mhm.
And this is with the mechanization of tea harvesting. Now, for a long time, tea has been harvested manually. And what that has meant is that you have a lot of tea harvesters being employed by these organizations. What has happened is that that has become unsustainable because the tea companies can no longer afford to pay for thousands and thousands of people to come and harvest tea. What they have done is that they have mechanized tea harvesting. Now, the trade unions are not in agreement because jobs are being lost.
Mhm.
But thinking at the macro level means that even as you are removing people from harvesting tea manually, you are actually creating better quality jobs elsewhere, if you think at the macro level. Now, so it calls upon us who are driving change in organizations that we must, while embracing the idea of digital age, and especially the changes that come with the digital age, we must realize that our governments, for instance, must put in place policies and put in place programs that will encourage the creation of better quality jobs in other parts of the industry. So it is not a one organization and a one company thing. It's a macro level situation. And that means that we must continuously upgrade ourselves so that we move into those areas where opportunities are existing. And that cannot be done by Kakuzi alone. That cannot be done by NAMPAC alone. That cannot be done by the organization that Barry works for alone. That must be done at a macro level.
So basically, as I mean, in everything that you are saying, just taking the last statement that you made, it is a nationwide, maybe continent-wide, because I can definitely, within the South African context, also say that these effects that we are seeing, like with your tea people, it is a nationwide drive towards upskilling. From decision makers, policy writers, corporate environments, everyone needs to be involved to ensure that development, upskilling, employability of individuals stay priority within an economy. That's what I'm hearing you are saying, Bhupesh. I'm so grateful for your hand. As a lawyer, I'm sure you have a lot to say. But please, if you would like to add value to that. Yes.
Sure. Thank you so much, Linda. What Paul started off, and then of course reckoned by Dr. Barry, Dr. Wilson, it kind of brought me back to as a student in 90s. I was a part of a geography where computers were being introduced, right? So I was in India at that point in time, and precisely the same situation, right? So what Paul started off with, communication, right? So how change management, and then further taken over Dr. Barry and Dr. Wilson, that how it is a nationwide drive, right? It needs to be looked upon very holistically to be able to, because an organization alone cannot, right? So I clearly remember people absolutely going against and going helter-skelter that computers gonna eat up our jobs, they're just gonna we're gonna go jobless, and look where we are today. As a country, if you look at India, it has one of the highest IT exports in the world, right? So there is no better way to kind of describe it, how panelists have put this forward, that if it is looked upon holistically, if it is looked upon in a much macro sense, however, constantly being acted upon at a micro level, right? There is a solution to this problem. Yes, change is always difficult, and more than the skill set or the tool set, it's the mindset change which is, which is always the most difficult, whether at an individual level or at an organization level. But yes, but at the end of the day, even at an organization level, if we keep constantly, keep the communication active, and then some of the organizations, of course, practice it very well, and constantly, trying to work out, the current manufacturing. If I talk about the setup, some of the people working in that manufacturing space have more experience than the youngsters, who come in, youngsters who are joining them at the age of 22, 24. There are people who've been working for last 30 years, right? And then the skill gap, age gap is huge. So definitely it's a big challenge for the industry. But then I guess what Dr. Wilson and then also Paul mentioned, that it is about constantly working at a macro level, strategizing at a micro level, and constantly trying to implement at a micro level. That could be the key. And yes, so that's where I rest my thought.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bhupesh. It definitely added value in our how we thought about previously, and history repeats itself, right? With that fear of the machines are here to take over and only take over. And it's not true, because we know the machines, like Paul said it's about strategy, it's about change, it's about communication. Dr. Wilson said it in the same form, and Dr. Barry said that as well. It's about how we communicate, how we ensure, and how we make sure that it enhances the productivity of those who are already there. It does ask for upskilling, because we're not equally talented. And I can remember when I needed to teach my mom how to do certain things on the computer. She was going to break it. I said, no, just go, But that's the type of fear that people don't want to expose themselves to. So it talks about agility, change. And is change a skill? Is it a skill that one can learn, that one can get better at? That's a question I would like to just leave out there in the open. But yeah, competing globally, but keeping it local. So that's also the challenges that we are facing as HR professionals are real. Barry, I see your hand is up. If you would like to add
yes,
to that.
I love what Bhupesh had to say about IT and computers. In my industry, there was major angst amongst many people, especially with applications, apps. And I smiled, because I look at how many clothing apps are available now, and how many people are getting involved and writing applications simply by saying, how can I do my job better? Being innovative, finding this idea, developing an app, putting it out there, and making our business easier. So, we don't know what we don't know. And I think for our staff members, we need to say to them, look, here's a tool. It's making your job easier. And if you've got a great idea, let's take it digital. Let's do something with it. So I was a bit of a digital dinosaur. Now I can't get enough of it, because it helps me run my companies better. So Bhupesh, thank you very much for that input. Certainly made me smile a great deal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barry. I think most of us on the panel can associate or had a touch point there when Bhupesh said what he said about that. But I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more about these. We started out talking about it, right? We started about saying, yes, there's digitization and AI, Internet of Things, and all of those beautiful technical transformations. But they still need a human. And we still need humans to navigate through the process, through the change, through the knowledge, through the productivity, through the policies, through the engagements. You spoke about labor. Again, I like that psychological contract that we have with our employees. So I think my question is, maybe on an individual level then, how do you prepare yourself for these technical advancements as like you said, Dr. Barry, a digital dinosaur? But how do we catch up with the skills levels that is needed within an organization? Paul said strategy is essential, and it is essential. The human capital strategy, your HR plan for how you're going to answer the needs of the organization linked to digital transformation. But maybe, I mean, I don't want you to tell me about your organizational plans and give your trade secrets away, but tell me, you as an individual, as an experienced in, I mean, 17 years, 33 years on a global level, et cetera, that's sitting around this table, how did you prepare for this challenge that people are calling it? And I think we've rephrased the challenge of this to the opportunity that the digital age is offering an HR individual. So maybe some personal reflection, if that would be okay. Paul, I see your camera is off. I'm not sure whether it's about data. Shall I ask you to, are you, there we go. Paul, perhaps if you could reflect on that, and I'll go through the panel to talk about that.
Just come again, the last sentences, because I am having a challenge on network.
Okay, all right, Paul, I was asking on a personal level, how did you, a professional, engage with this digital transformation by upskilling yourself, or what did you do to stay abreast with what was happening in the world and how this digital age is now offering an opportunity? We rephrase that. It's not a challenge anymore. What did you do as a professional?
I think I should at first point out that being part of a larger group, sometimes you have the benefit of these things coming to you when you're just sitting on your desk. So you don't have to do so much. Somebody somewhere is working as a specialist in the group, trying to identify opportunities and continuously downloading them down to you and telling you this is what you're going to do. So I don't want to take a lot of credit in terms of my own effort on digital advancement. But the key here is professional sensitivity and trying to always figure out what is going to make you more effective as a HR practitioner. And when digitization knocked on the door, of course, if you're professionally committed, then the next thing is you have to do what you have to do. Acquire new skills, make use of the technology and the gadgets and the opportunities available to entrench digitization. And I think as you do it, they say practice makes perfect. The more you try out several aspects of digitization and they work, the more you get the confidence, you start justifying them as important investments in the organization. And since, as I said, you are not talking to yourself, there is somebody else in the group that is backing you up, then it is very easy to get going. The ideas are received, they're acknowledged, they're supported, and you move one step at a time towards the digitization. As we'll
seems to have technical issues there in hearing Paul. All right, there we go. Unfortunately, we lost Paul, but that's okay. What I did like about what I would like to reiterate. Hello, Paul. I'm just reflecting on what you said. One of the things that came up to me is that you said, okay, it came down and you were lucky because it came upon your table and you had to, but you didn't have to. As a professionally committed person, you took the opportunity and made something of it. And I think that's very important, that motivation that we leave within our employees to upskill and to go to be agile and to go with the flow and learn the new things and the change that it took for you to take the steps that you needed that you needed to take there, and how that built your confidence. So thank you very much. Or every time you did something new, the uncertainty that goes with it, and the more you do it, the more certain you become in doing it. So that's a wonderful tip that you're giving other professionals that's listening as attendees. But I'm very grateful for that, because it is about opportunities, but also taking on those opportunities and allowing yourself to learn. I think that's something that we forget sometimes. Dr. So thank you very much for that, Paul. Dr. Wilson, if you would like to reflect on that, because you on many different levels involved within the manufacturing industry, but you're also an academic. So perhaps if you could reflect, you like learning.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Linda. And yeah, I just follow up from what Paul was talking about earlier on about, you see, being part of an organization requires us to align ourselves to the objectives of the organization. So what you're looking at is the alignment between the objectives of the organization as achieved through the various strategic actions, and your individual objectives and aspirations. Now, quite often, so you're dealing with the what and the how. So quite often, the what also changes, but the how changes more often than the what changes. Indeed, our organization, and indeed many organizations, have a mission that more or less spells out what the organization exists to do. And although products may change, the services that are rendered may change, they change, but within a spectrum that is largely similar. Over time, they may change very significantly. So that, for instance, if you're in the textile industry, that tends to linger on for a long, long time. But the how of manufacturing the textiles changes from time to time, because obviously you are looking for greater efficiencies. So obviously you're looking for ways that you can achieve more with this all the time. Now, bringing that to the individual level is that if you are aligned with the objectives of the organization that you're working for, then it follows then that you need to find out ways in which you can continue being aligned. The foundation of all this is how we handle change. It is about change. And how do we handle change? It's by embracing it. Because many times with these issues, you either embrace change or perish, literally. So with that realization, for me, it is about constantly familiarizing myself with the requirements of things like AI, continuous learning, so that relevance, I continue to be relevant in the situation in which I find myself. And it's not always easy because at the first instance, we all resist change. We are familiar, we want to work with the familiar. But this is where now you have one of the things that I keep talking about here at Kakuzi, and indeed even in the academia, is the whole aspect of reverse mentoring. Traditionally, the older people and more experienced people have always mentored the younger ones. But there are instances, especially around technology, where we need to embrace reverse mentoring or reverse mentorship, so that those who are more adept at the usage of technology, especially the Internet of Things, we who are more experienced and who are in that sort of scenario that Bhupesh talked about when we thought that the computers were going to wipe out our jobs, can be able to benefit from the people who are more adept at the adoption of technology and be able to be still useful to our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wolf. Reverse mentoring. That takes a lot of from certain characters. It might take a lot of humblance, right, to acknowledge that there's so much that we can learn from the younger generation, and it is a tradition shift. Not just lying within an organization, but sometimes within a culture as well, which is something that we need to acknowledge, because we are different parts of one form, right? Bhupesh, I see your hand is up. There's if you would like to add to that.
In fact, my question is an extension to Dr. Wilson's love for education and institutions, and he himself, a constant learner. So that brings me to the question of the industry academia partnership per se, and why I bring up is this is driven from some of the leading industries like IT, right? So wherein they use academic institutions to use them as a breeding ground for the upcoming talent. So that, with respect to human resources, there are two challenges primarily. Challenge one, which is around reskilling, upskilling your existing set of employees, right? And that's much in control within the organization, right? But then there's an equal challenge since the processes are changing, since the demand is changing, and at the academic level, they are still teaching the curriculum which was being taught like 10 years back, 20 years back, right? So some of the IT organizations, the big IT giants globally, which of course not at the liberty to name, but yes, what they do is, they connect typically with the last year students, final year engineering students, and they would introduce a module, right towards the end of their last semester, maybe for 2 months, 3 months, or in the final year of their studies. And they work closely with the academic institutions, and they use that time to cut short the performance time for them, for the students when they join the organization, right? So initially it was taking 6 months for them to be productive, and now they're introducing certain modules in their final year itself, and they have the opportunity to kind of shape them, and tune them to the kind of workforce that they would want. And this includes skill set, this includes tool set, mindset, a little bit of campus to corporate journey also, that you've been a student, now you'll be a professional, how you need to maintain and all that. So open to comments, if that sort of partnerships are viable in a manufacturing sort of a setup.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously the way academia tends to be to move a lot slower than industry does, but it's obviously what you're suggesting about that cooperation and that the linkages between industry and academia, so that industry then can benefit from academia and academia can benefit from industry, because academia benefits from industry by way of knowing what is it that needs to be in our curriculum, what does the industry require, industry benefits from academia, especially from R&D, in areas that academicians are more adept and spend more time and more resources. I think there can only be a benefit. I think the importance of that cannot be gainsaid, and where it has been practiced, there have only been dividends that have been reaped out of it.
That's a very valuable contribution there. I think it's Dr. Barry, maybe I see your hand is up. I think we want to say the same thing. So perhaps if you would like to comment on that.
I'm actually just coming in at a different angle with the invasion of IT and the very fast uptake of new innovations. I think our contribution must also be a bit of sober wisdom, because there are so many new products on the market that can help us beneficiate, improve the whole bit, but having been around the block, our job is as well to take a look at this and ask whether there is goodness of fit, whether this will help us move forward. Because it's terrifying if you're bringing in new products the whole time to our fellow staff members. They are learning at an accelerated rate. So my final words on it is, let's be sober, let's be wise, let's take our years of practice, embrace change, embrace technology, but be wise and careful about it, and don't just buy it for the sake of buying it. Thank you.
I think that's also valuable, and I think we're talking about different products perhaps here, but I think the value with partnerships between industry as well as an academic institutions or academic I don't know what else to call it, and business schools and things like that, is to ensure that that which we are adding to an organization, or whether it's employees or whether it's training and development, right? That which we are adding adds value, right, to the asset, the human asset of the organization, because it is, in most organizations, one of the most expensive assets in that organization. We spend a lot of money on our employees, but we should, on our, it is the human, it truly is the human capital of the organization. Paul, your hand went up. There must have been something that you would like to add to that.
I thought it's just interesting also to note, as far as manufacturing and digitization is concerned, we have another very key variable, which is the demographics. I think manufacturing tends to keep people for long. If you look at our workforce demographics, we have older people who have worked for longer years. Probably Dr. Wilson also has the same in the plantation. Therefore, the journey towards digitization may not be the same as telecommunication industry, for instance. So there are certain aspects of this transformation which have got to do with changing the culture of the people and managing the change process so that the people appreciate rather than they loathe the digitization. You find sometimes very, very, very simple things that you want to implement. For instance, the digital distribution of a payslip. You will find that employees will resist that because before they realize that it is convenient for them, they still believe that they just want their payslip in hard copy. Therefore, that becomes an industrial relations issue, yeah, which you have to deal with. So digitization will now find you in a situation whereby there are certain compliance or industrial relation challenges which we have to surmount. Of course, one of the things we've been looking at is about the need for, I mean, when you're looking at your workforce demographics and probably you are doing your recruitment strategies, probably you want to look at how digitally competent or what digital skills do your new workforce need to have. If you're bringing in new people, you cannot now afford to ignore that because you know digitization will play a role. And I'm saying this bearing in mind that for digitization to work, everybody must be involved. It doesn't add any value if I am digitally competent, but the rest of the workforce is not. Whatever I want to do with that digital infrastructure, I'll not be able to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, I agree with you there. And we were talking about the cultural change. We're talking about, recruiting people with the skills that we need for the future. But I want to bring us back to the tea harvesters that Dr. Wilson was talking about. Because of the mechanism of what happened there, the machine, the productivity and how quickly it can happen. What is our responsibility towards those employees in our organizations and in our countries? So Dr. Wilson alluded to it's policies that need to be adjusted to make sure that we still ensure that those people can contribute economically to the company. You said there's an economic relationship that we have as HR people towards our employees. Just letting employees go, labor will get involved, the unions will get involved in that way. Luckily in South Africa, we've got a very strong skills development, occupational development, kind of sector education and training authorities who are mandated. We are all mandated to pay a levy towards skills development in the organization, and it will be in the country, and it hopes to upskill sectors. Each sector has something like that needs to answer the needs of the sector. What is our responsibility towards those which we previously would have classified as unskilled, although they are very skilled and they were doing these jobs? How do we bridge that gap? Or am I asking a very difficult question? What is our responsibility towards that as organizations? And maybe as an academic institute as well, Dr. Barry, if you would like to say something about that. And is it something that we are responsible for?
I think it's very important that we do incremental training. A professor of mine always used to say munchable chunks, and we can't fast track every individual and make them a professor in a month. So these people are working, they're committed, they've got social lives, massive burdens on their shoulders, let's not forget that. So incremental upskilling, recognizing them, awarding them for that, getting them to master that, and then taking them forward. And then, of course, making them change agents for us and spreading the word. So it's not a fast track thing. It's got to be a cultural habit that we invest in our artisans.
Thank you, Dr. Barry. That was beautifully stated. Paul, I see you know what Dr. Barry is talking about, the incremental upskilling, so that it adds to that changed culture that we wish to achieve in this continuous learning. Was it you, Dr. Wilson, who spoke about the organization which needs to be in continuous learning and shaping their own future within this transformational period that we are in? So yeah, incremental upskilling, we're not going to change the world in a day, but it's definitely, and Paul, you also said that, it's within the strategy, the human resource strategy, that we need to make sure that we are being fair, and that psychological contract that we have with our employees lies within what is also their wellness, which is something that you also refer to, Dr. Wilson, their balance, their employee wellness, and keeps them motivated to, as you said, take on the challenges as individuals, to be professionally committed towards people, planet, profit, and the purpose of the organization. If I can say that, that the 3 P's, that 1 P is very important as well, to stay committed to the purpose and linked to the purpose of the organization. So I have chowed too much time now with my final statement, and I'm going to ask each and every panelists to please give us and give the participants your final thought, what we can take away and allow growth within our own environment from this discussion that we just had. Dr. Wilson? Putting you on the spot.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I think to sum it up is to sort of say that the problem with change is that it only goes forward. It doesn't go backwards. That means we are called upon to do everything that we can to be relevant. It's not like we have a choice. Some of the ways, because what is the reason that we are in the digital age? More often than not, it is because of necessity. The necessity to be more effective, the necessity to be more efficient, the necessity to solve problems that have existed. In our environments and in our workplaces, we continue to look at, and this is why we talk about challenges in everything. We continue to have challenges. And what we are trying to do all the time is to be able to lessen the burden of the challenges that we have in our organizations. Now, one way to do that, and which is being embraced worldwide now, is this digital era. What we must do as individuals and as students that are coming into the workplace, or current students that are coming into the workplace, existing employees in the workplace, is to keep up, to align ourselves with the requirements, with the necessities of the digital age. And by so doing, we will continue to be relevant. Obviously, as Dr. Barry said at one point, this is not to say that we should not question everything and every technology that's thrown at us. But if we keep in mind that the technology comes in to solve a problem, so if it solves our problem, and if it is sustainable, because sustainability, you just talked about the P, bottom line, the sustainability from a people perspective, from a profits perspective, and from a planet perspective and environment perspective. As long as it solves our problems, it is sustainable in the sense that it takes into consideration the 3 Ps. Then what we need to do is to embrace by reskilling, by remaining relevant, by being agile, by being flexible, so that we can continue to have a more efficient operation in our various organizations, a more effective operation that is sustainable for the long run, for the sake of the various stakeholders that there are. Traditionally, businesses existed only to make profits. I mean, that is what we learned in school. Yeah. But now we know that there are very, very many stakeholders to a business. And those stakeholders have various things that they demand of the business. We must, of course, pay attention to all those stakeholders, the views of those stakeholders, how our decisions and our actions are going to affect them, even as we embrace the digital age and the requirements of the digital age. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. Paul, your final thoughts from
thank you. I think yes, digitization is here as a tool for enhancing our effectiveness, but it's not going to replace our expertise in the field. I think that needs to go out clearly. And any person looking to make an impact in this field would first need to gain the relevant knowledge and skills before they can deploy digitization and technology. So the first thing is, what do you want to benefit, or what is the return on investment on digitization? Because we are saying we must be very relevant to the business. Yeah, we cannot just do because somebody else is doing. So what is your specific return on investment for any digitization initiative? Yeah, try to justify, does it make a business case? Try to involve and make sure that the needs of all the stakeholders, line managers, and everyone else is taken care of. There is what we call the what is the need for me. Yeah, if you want digitization to work, then you must make sure that you answer that question. for all the stakeholders. Yeah, what is in it for me? So we must approach it from a business perspective, that you're getting a tool that will enable us to transform our business to the next level. And the most other important thing is the question of dealing with the unexpected. Yeah, digitization doesn't just move smoothly. And when you are strategizing and implementing, then there is what we call the unexpected. We must be ready to deal with it, and it can potentially be very destructive or disastrous. Yeah, so it brings in the issue of risk management in digitization. What are the risks, and how are you gonna mitigate them? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There are very important aspects as well, very important skills that you need to add when it comes to digitization, when it comes to that return on investment and your triple P as well, because surely the human asset or the human capital, the risk of losing talent, we spoke about talent as well, is something that we can put rands and cents to. Rands and cents, of course, South Africa, but it's definitely, there's a dollar price on it, and reskilling, upskilling, inducting, recruitment, selection, all of those things cost money, where retaining is still the cheapest form of investing in your human capital, right? So how are we doing that, and what we're doing with the risk of losing talent, how we analyzing and assessing and making sure that stays, that doesn't become part of the narrative of the organization. Dr. Barry, your final thought, and then I'm going to ask Bhupesh
Thank you.
to close out the webinar for us. Dr. Barry?
So my final thought is that now more than ever, ethical governance and leadership will lead the way to loyalty amongst our staff and give us the leading edge. We really need to look at that in the global context. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Barry. Certainly agree with you there, and certainly something that we haven't touched on today. My goodness, I can't believe that the time has gone, but what is the responsibility of the leader, and what is the responsibility of HR, and all of those questions are still mulling in my head, but I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to talk to one another and maybe explore the future of HR in the digital age, spotlight on manufacturing 2.1. Our next webinar that we can engage in to just keep this relevant and make sure that we keep ourselves up to date with what is happening and what is relevant within organizations today. So Bhupesh, if you would like to give a final thought from Regenesis Kenya's behalf. You were sitting right next to both Paul and Dr. Wilson in your beautiful Kenyan climate. So if you would like to do
Not
that.
so beautiful now.
No, really? Very cold in Joburg today.
It is very cold at 18 degrees.
Oh my goodness. I got in my car this morning and it was 1 degree. Again.
Oh,
Yeah, so be grateful for 18.
Okay.
And
Thank you so much.
I noticed Dr. Wilson's reaction on 1 degree. It was very genuine. But coming to the point, and then today's webinar, I guess I kind of started off with this, that it's a pleasure to be with such experience. There's a cumulative almost 100 years of experience sitting in this small panel. So it's so wonderful, and more than for us, I think it is the young professionals who were really excited. So there were a few hundred, close to registrations, and people wanted to, and they were young HR professionals, and then people from different aspects of business, from manufacturing. I guess as an industry practitioners like Dr. Wilson, Dr. Barry, Paul, young professionals, they really look up to, to discussions like this. And this really helps them to shape their individual careers. It really helps them to kind of contribute better and a lot better in their own respective roles. So I really would like to thank all of you. And Linda, thank you so much for coordinating and moderating this so beautifully, and getting us all together. Kudos to the team. So that's where I would rest my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bhupesh. It's been an absolute pleasure today to share our thoughts, our experiences, our knowledge on exactly this this aspect of digital transformation, how the fear should not lie within us as humans, because we still need to switch the machine on, press the button. But I think the value take for me as well, or just to add to that again, is the investment in our human capital, keeping the talent within our organizations, keeping talent motivated, and ensuring that there is a employee wellness with the psychological contract. New word, I'm going to use it more and more now. Dr. Wilson, thank you so much. But to keep the psychological contract a healthy one, and making sure that we motivate our employees to be productive, to be effective, and to be a return on our investment when it comes to these things. Upskilling, reskilling, organizational shifts, it's a personal and of course a professional commitment that we need to make towards ourselves and towards the organization when we do find the purpose, the fourth P of the triple P, valuable to you as an individual. Gentlemen, I thank thee from the bottom of my heart for being part of this discussion. You have added value. I have checked Q&A. There don't seem to be any here. I don't know on social media. I haven't been notified of any on social media, which means that you have definitely answered questions before they were asked. That's how I see it. But the value that you added today in this conversation will forever be grateful for. And have a beautiful 18-degree day in Kenya today. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. You have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a lovely afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, participants.